Thing up, we don't take a roll call. We take a roll call.
Attendance?
Why?
Most committee meetings we do.
A little rusty at this, are we?
Yeah, I know.
There he is. Representative Kinner.
Here.
Thank you. Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Schwartz. Representative Simpson.
Here.
Representative Stith.
Here.
Representative Walters.
Here.
Chairman Nicholas.
Here.
Woo-hoo.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do, because we've got LSO here, is quickly go through the Department of Fire Protection and Electrical Safety bill. We've seen this bill several times already. What we need to do is finalize it and kick it back out so we can get it numbered. And so that's what we're here. So Tamara, just kind of walk us through the bill and give us that quick background history and then any changes from the last time we saw it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Tamara Revley with LSO here and staff to the Joint Appropriations Committee. This bill was before the Joint Appropriations Committee under a different number and under a slightly different form. It was Department of Fire Protection and Electrical Safety Fees. It didn't have that -2. The Joint Appropriations Committee did not vote to sponsor that bill, and so it was brought back as an individual or House committee bill. And that's what's before you with some changes. There was some discussion in the meeting about what level of fees or what the fees should be set to for plan reviews, and a bit of discussion on that, whether they should be done by rule and what kind of authority that would grant to the department to set fees by rule or to change those fees. And so what you see in this bill, the major change is codifying this table that's referenced in the bill. It's originally from the 1997 Uniform Building Code, and it's been incorporated into Wyoming's rules. And so what you see in the bill is codifying those amounts such that they create a maximum. So that is not raising those fees. You can change those numbers if you'd like to raise those fees, but otherwise it would just codify those amounts, which are sort of naturally adjusted for inflation because they're related to construction costs, which themselves have raised and I guess increase with inflation. So that's the major change. The other change is amending the distribution of fee revenue. Existing statute and the proposed bill you saw would have kept a 60-40 split between the department and the general fund. This bill changes it such that plan review revenue would be kept by the department for their expenses in administering the statutes they are charged to, as well as the inspection and licensing fees that are being increased in this bill. So there's really 3 sets of fees. The first one is plan review fees. Those are just codified, what's in existing rule and has been in existing rules for many, many years. Then there's licensure fees and the like, and then other inspection fees. So we'll jump through those. The latter 2 are raised. The first one is just codifying the limit and continuing them. Throughout, you'll also see the same technical corrections and some conforming amendments that you saw in the JAC bill. So page 1 relates to plan review fees. And you see the first change, striking the 1997 Uniform Building Code as adjusted for inflation and replacing that with the International Code Council for Building Valuation and as adopted by rule of the department. Then on the bottom of the page are some limitations on rule of the department. And those limitations are to create the maximum amount of fees that could be charged, which is codifying that table that has been in rule for so long. The other building valuation table, that was discussed at the last JAC meeting, and it's promulgated by the International Code Council and updated fairly regularly, that provides standardization of costs expected for building, depending on the type of building. The lines on page 13 and 14 clarify that the fee revenue would not be deposited into the general fund and instead would be kept in a separate account to be applied only for expenses incurred by the department in administering 35.9.101 through 35.9.130. So then pages 2, bottom of page 2, page 3, page 4, and the top of page 5 through line 10 is just verbatim what that table in rule adopted by the department sets forth. And that hasn't changed for several years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to make sure that I've got my head around this again, Tamara. So just for the simplicity of it there at the bottom of page 2, if you had a construction cost with a total valuation that was from $1 to $4.99 that required a plan review, it'd be $1,603. That's what that's going to be. But as time goes on, if that same project now had a cost of $500, $2,099, there's going to be that automatic inflation built in where the plan reviews, we wouldn't have to come back and do these review fee adjustments because they're going to adjust automatically because the price of the will increase. Is that, have I got that accurate?
That's right, Representative Larson, Mr. Chairman. As building valuation and costs of construction rise, a building that would have one time been in subparagraph A will now find themselves in subparagraph B or C or D. You know.
Thank you.
Okay, page 6, anything 5 or 6? Yeah, go ahead.
Bottom of page 5 and 6 are some technical corrections that we discussed in the prior Joint Appropriations Committee meeting. On page 6, one change that was discussed in the meeting, I think fairly thoroughly, was the change from cost to valuation for consistency. But of course, it is a substantive change in that a building could cost less if you have some source of materials that is thought market value. Otherwise, it relates to value. And those are standardized through international promulgated materials.
So I have a question on the bottom of page 6, line 18. Used as educational occupancies. That just seems awkward to me.
Mr. Chairman, that was brought in and requested by the department to match the terminology that's used in the International Building Code. It's, I understand it to be buildings that are actually used for education, and that's the terminology used in that code.
So educational occupancies have basically a definition in the codes, and that's what they're adhering to.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And Tamara, up there on page 6, up there where you, on lines 5 and 6, where you remove the term cost and replace it with valuation, we had struggled with that because previously you don't know what the costs are until you're done. And so is valuation, is that synonymous, or are you saying that that's an estimate?
Valuation, I believe, would match the documents that are provided. You see reference to them beginning provided by the International Code Council for Building Valuation. Those are those schedules of type of building by square foot. And so it's all standardized. And so that would just be the value. This is a,
The estimated value of what that's going to be.
Yes, based
I
on
just
that
want to make sure you
standardized
got that
schedule.
language right, not, thank you.
Then on page 7, you begin to see the fee increases. So up until now, aside from the revenue distribution, there were not major changes to actual charging of fees and amounts charged. Now, beginning on page 6, you see the increases for the electrical installations and permits and inspections. And
Can you remind us, when's the last time we raised the fees?
I'll leave that to the department. I think it was in 2005, if I remember from the prior testimony, but
Heads behind you.
I could be corrected.
Okay, go ahead.
So on subsection C, These are maximum amounts. The fee established by the department shall not exceed the following. And currently, I believe all of the fees are at the maximum amount, but this raises them by about double for many of the fees, and it keeps the same fee structure as is currently. Some are slightly more than double. So if you have specific questions on those, what type of permits and services are provided for each fee, I'll leave that to the department. But otherwise, you've seen the numbers before.
Go ahead.
And this may be a question to the agency, but do we have then electrical inspectors in each community? Or does this fee incorporate into it travel costs to go to a community to provide inspections? Mike, you're gonna have to give me more than that. I don't know what that means, so.
Yeah,
Please.
come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. That's correct. The funding reimburses for travel for the inspectors who have regions and not
Okay.
specific communities.
Okay, go ahead.
On the bottom of page 8, line 19, this is a change from the JAC bill you saw last. This strikes 60% and just leaves it at the fees collected for these electrical inspections and permits shall be deposited into a separate account for the purposes of providing additional state electrical inspectors. That just continues.
And so, Mike, what we're going to need is whoever will end up presenting this bill to the floor, we're going to need specific data to be able to answer questions. In terms of maximum fees, where fees are out, how much is collected. We'll need to know, again, the numbers of how much that 60-40 split doesn't cover your costs. And so what we're doing is just reimbursing your actual costs. And we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, but the explanation of all that, we're going to have to refresh our memories on when this comes up, assuming, I mean, it'll come up probably in the next couple of days. So whoever gets the bill, we'll need to work with Mike and staff in order to have the data. All right.
So if a situation arises, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Is it currently, if 100% was kept, is that going to be in excess of the cost of administering the program?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schwartz, I don't know that number. I would defer to Justine for some of that, but it's a difficult prediction, I guess, if that's the right term to use, because some of these inspections end up being multiple inspections with multiple trips back to the location, and then others are much more simplistic, and so it would take a little while, and I would defer back to Jane and Justine to give us some accurate numbers on a predictability on that.
So we asked that question earlier, and the general answer was not likely, is my recollection. And if it does, you'll pile it up and then accumulate it and then spend it when you next time the obligations comes up. So that's my recollection. Okay.
Right. And Mr. Chairman, keep in mind that these are maximum amounts. So if by rule, the department determines that charging the maximum amount and keeping 100% of the revenue would be in excess of the amount needed to fulfill their statutory obligation, then they would
So
have
you're
to account for
currently
that.
at the maximum amount before we do this, and then by rule, you will increase it. But you do know how much at this point in time, what you're going to increase it to, or what you think your reasonable needs are?
I believe that we set what we thought was a reasonable amount. And our, Mr. Chairman, sorry. What we did was we went out and looked around regionally as to what was being charged at this time. And then we brought ourselves up to parity with those with those numbers. And so we think that we're at a reasonable, or will be, with these increases, we will be at a reasonable amount at that time.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just to repeat what I think you just said, if we just use page 7, Romanet A as an example for the residential unit, it's currently at $20. You would increase it to $50. And that's the max that would be allowed, and your plan would be to set it at the max.
Mr.
And that would be
Chairman,
fairly close to the regional comparators in other states.
and Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, that's correct.
So is there, I'm just looking at, would it benefit you or make any difference if this is effective immediately versus 1st of July? Did it make any difference, or can you get to, that allow you time to get your rules up and running, but that's pretty easy to do. Just think about that and let us know, because this will come back in front of JAC, our House Appropriations, in a couple days.
Okay. Mr.
And what I'd
Chairman,
like
thank
to do is bring that information when this comes back, so we can have that data for whoever gets to run this bill. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
further questions? All right, go ahead.
Continue on the bottom of page 8 through the top of page 9, that you see the strike to allow for all of the funds to be deposited with the agency rather than the general fund, that 40% that was previously going to the general fund. On lines 13 and 14, there's a conforming change to use the school building terminology for school buildings used as educational occupancies. Then on the bottom of page 9 and on to page 10 are the increases to fees for licenses, work permits, examinations, apprenticeships. And these again are a maximum amount, shall be determined by the department, but shall not exceed. And then you see the increases for each kind of licensure type of fee below. These are the same increases you saw as the Joint Appropriations Committee. That continues on to page 11. What is new on page 11 is subsection B, to provide that the fees collected shall be deposited into a separate account for the purposes of providing additional state electrical inspectors. That removes that 60-40 split again and allows 100% of the revenue to be retained. Then finally, there's a section 2 directing the department to promulgate the rules by July 1st of 2022. And section 3 makes that section, allowing them to begin working on the rules immediately, makes that effective immediately, while the rest of the bill and the fee increases and the revenue changes could go into effect on July 1st, 2022.
Okay, go ahead.
Director, so on the license fees, are those one time at the time they become a contractor, or are they an annual fee?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Larson, it depends on the license or the fee. There are some that are renewable every 3 years, some that are renewable annually. And so it would depend specifically on the license that we would talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Could you maybe get us that in case we're asked?
Representative, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for the director, can we also assume that these license fees have been adjusted regionally? You've done the same research and taken these to the sort of a regional kind of a level?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes. In fact, there's an organization that the chief inspector belongs to, and they communicate at regional meetings and they discuss these things. And so we would simply be catching up with the regional cost.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Councilor Volley. On page 11, subsection B, about the fees going to the agency, again on page 8, subsection F, the fees to the agency. In that paragraph, in both of those paragraphs, the language says, for the purpose of providing additional state electrical inspectors. Would it be better for us to clean up that language and mirror it to page 2 and just say to be applied for expenses incurred by the department in administering statute 35-9, et cetera. Because I think our goal is to allow the department to use these for their expenses, not just for additional electrical inspectors. Would that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a policy choice. I think that the language relating to the additional state electrical inspectors came about when that 40-60 split was adopted into one of the prior amendments of this act. And so that's simply a policy choice, whether you want to open that up to more purposes than just electrical inspectors. But it sounds like that might be the policy choice that would accomplish your
What language
goals.
you're recommending?
Mr. Chairman, then I don't know that we're working the bill, but I would, on page 8 and again on page 11, page 8 in subsection F, which is the bottom of the page, lines 19 and beyond, and then page 11, it's lines 11 through 16 in that subsection B. But I would remove the language that says for the purpose of providing additional state electrical inspectors. And I'm paraphrasing here and would hope Tamara would help me clean it up. And then I would insert language that said I've applied only for expenses incurred by the department in administering statute 35-9, 101 through 130.
Okay, got that?
Yes, and I understand that that change would be for both licensure fees as well as electrical.
Okay, any further discussion on the bill? Further discussion on the bill?
Thank you for your
Any
help.
public
Tamara.
comment on the bill? We have any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We have a motion on the bill.
Second.
Moved by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Walters. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call. please.
Amendment?
Oh, and yeah,
Vote on Tom's amendments.
Tom's amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Roll call on the bill.
All right. The roll call is on 22 LSO 0388 as amended. Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz, Representative Simpson,
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas.
Aye.
All right, that is passed.
Okay, we will see this. So just to clarify, what we would like when this comes back to us, we want to, I think it would be useful for us to know how much you have received for the 60/40 in the last like 5 years or 6 years running. How much then we have had to appropriate for general funds to cover the remaining costs. Then we want to know what we think these fees increase will raise, and then what your costs are so that we can see that we can balance them out. Okay, so because those are the questions that we're going to be asked. So we need to know those, have
And
those
the regional costs.
Yeah.
Compared.
at our fingertips. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman,
Evan?
I'm sorry, Representative.
I noticed on the sponsored by, it has your name, but actually that should be the House.
It'll turn to House
Appropriations.
House appropriations.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and we appreciate your support in this bill and moving it forward.
Keep plugging away. Okay.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Tamara, thank you for the help.
Okay, next we've got a couple bills to are our appropriations bills that we've already worked. Let's start with local governments. Very simple one. Any discussion on the bill? Any discussion on the bill?
Move the bill.
Second.
Public, oh, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Roll call. Yeah. Any public comment on the bill? Just kicking it out for tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, obviously the formula the bill uses is very complicated. It dates, I believe this is the so-called Madden formula from many years ago, which I believe someday should be amended and perhaps reflected so that Rock Springs gets more than half of what Laramie gets. But for today's purposes, I think we go ahead and do this and to continue to support our local cities, counties, and
Yeah.
towns.
When you open that Pandora's box, be prepared to be drowned.
Yeah.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, if I may add, it was amended the last time we did it, the formula. So, and that was not fun.
little tweak here, a little tweak there. Okay, we'll close public comment. We need to take a roll call on this? Pick it up? All right, roll call.
Roll call for House Bill 42.
Yep.
Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz, Representative Simpson,
Aye.
Representative Stiff,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
and Chairman Nicholas.
All right,
Unanimous.
who would we want, who wants to present this to the floor? Okay. Great. Next. Let's go to workers' comp. Any public comment on the workers' comp bill? Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jody Levin on behalf of the Trona industry. I just wanted to come and express my appreciation to the committee for addressing this issue. This came on my radar late in the year from the Trona companies. I worked with Representative Stitt and Representative Larson to fix what is, by all means, looks like a technical error. So I just wanted to come and say thank you.
There's a little bit more than that.
I know, it does, but for purposes of the Trona industry, and the concern that all of a sudden it would look like their operations are far more dangerous than they are, and the potential to have premiums be well above what they deserve to be. They really do appreciate all of your work.
Great, we appreciate it, Jody. Any other public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We have a motion on the bill.
Move the bill.
Second.
Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Larson. Further discussion on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just, I'm curious, looking at this and given the nature of the pandemic, we did not extend the date for when the period occurs. And I don't know whether it would be appropriate to allow coverage to go farther than the end of March.
We removed that.
So we did that on purpose.
Is my memory failing me?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the original intent of the bill, Mr. Chairman. That was the original intent of the bill is to carry the coverage forward to another year. We got into that. We got looking at the impact it's going to have on workers' comp, the payout and the thing. We backed off from that and then put this amended language in to cover the EMR stuff.
Okay, further discussion. Seeing none, roll call. Okay, you can public comment. Come.
I wanted to thank you for the COVID. Really helped the workers in the state immensely. When we were at convention in September, we had workforce services come and speak about the COVID bill. And we had guys in the mine out in Kimmerer, and then we had some in the mine in Rock Springs, where they had COVID breakouts, and they didn't know about the statute. And that's just because it's so hard to get the info out. So they had a death. One of the miners in Kimmerer died, and his family was eligible for workers' comp benefits, for death benefit, because of the work you guys did. So it was very helpful and really, really did lift the workers up and get them the money they needed to get through the COVID. I want to just thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm Tammy Johnson.
Just
For the record, I apologize. Thank you.
That's
very
all
much.
right.
But it was a really important bill, and if you extended it, it would be great. But no, it's probably.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. And we've already got a motion on the bill, so any further discussion on the bill? Roll call, please.
House Bill 59. Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
I.
Representative Schwartz, Representative Simpson,
Aye.
Representative Stiff,
Aye.
Representative Walters, Chairman Nicholas,
Aye.
all ayes.
All right, Representative Stiff, I think you'll carry that on the floor, right? Next, we've got bid rejection or denial for public works, otherwise known as the Larson bill.
It's the make Clark happy bill.
Okay, obviously, we've worked this bill numerous times. Are there any public comment on this bill? Any public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. We have a motion on.
Move the bill.
Second. Moved by Representative Larson, second by Representative Walters. Discussion on the bill. Any changes? Any changes? Seeing none. Roll call.
House Bill 78, Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz, Representative Simpson,
Hi.
Representative Stiff,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
All ayes all around.
Okay. We've done our business for the day. So before we adjourn, Donna Sheen wanted to have a quick comment on because she missed the opportunity when the ARPA funds were talking about particular benefits. So Donna, just, you can take 5 quick minutes. We are all ears.
Retiring Representative Nicholas, Chairman Nicholas, I'm Donna Sheen. I am Director of the Wyoming Children's Law Center and also work with a group of people we call the Wyoming Youth Justice Coalition. And we are a group of professionals who are trying to help improve our juvenile justice system in Wyoming. And one of the things we wanted to bring to the attention of the Appropriations Committee is that during the third round of the budget cuts, the Community Juvenile Services Board funding was completely eliminated across the state. And so we are seeking sponsorship and hope that the Appropriations Committee would support a budget amendment to restore that funding. It provides extremely critical programs for diversion for youth in 15 counties in the state, Laramie County, Natrona County, Albany County. I won't be able to name them all, but I'm happy to provide a list of them. And we're using that program to try and expand into other counties to be able to develop community-based programs that will keep kids out of the higher end or the back end of the system. They'll identify and implement interventions that are far less costly. And I would just point out that since 2009, when the legislature first funded it, placement rates were reduced drastically in the state. And so part of what we want to make you aware of is that if these funds are cut, the infrastructure of these programs will go away and it won't be easy to restart them. And so it's very likely that we will increase our placement rates yet again. We still continue to be one of the highest states or highest in placement rates, highest state for youth placement rates. And we spend a lot of money if you look at the budget on placements. So this is one of those penny wise, pound foolish things that we're hoping that you will consider helping us get put back into the budget. So it was a $2 million allocation. Originally, the idea was that DFS would use dollars saved to increase the funding to counties as the placement rates went down and DFS's budget had more room for developing and paying for community juvenile services. Right now, there are 15 counties share the $2 million allocation. I believe it's $1 million a year, so $2 million for the biennium. And it is distributed based on population. So the larger counties get the larger portion of the funding. And it's used primarily, for example, in Albany County, Big Brothers Big Sisters runs a diversion program and mentoring. So they will take youth who've been referred to court. And about 90% of the kids are now diverted. They don't go to court and we save that expense. And they usually just work with them in varying degrees, depending on their issues, to get mental health needs addressed in the community, to have them repair the harm that they did in the community and restore it. In Laramie County, for example, I know that The program Youth Alternatives was primarily funded with this work, and they do similar diversionary counseling and intervention. They have programs for after school and counseling programs that they offer children for that. And the way it was kind of onerous in the beginning, the way the legislature created the program. So some counties found that it was a little too problematic to create a board in that county. But over the years, I think the legislature tweaked that and made it a little easier. So there were 15 counties who eventually started these programs. I would say the ones who don't, it's not because they don't have an interest, but because the funding was too small when they divided it up by population, which is what they decided to do. The smaller counties got very little funding. And so I think there was not a lot of incentive to jump through the hoops that you have to, because the other important thing about this funding is DFS has control of it to ensure that it's being used on evidence-based interventions. So they're not spending it on programs that don't work. And if, for example, I think it's been suggested that the ARPA funding and some of the grant money that will be given to communities could replace this, which it certainly would help. But the problem would be you would lose that infrastructure that's been created. Many of the boards have already said if they, if the funding isn't restored, we'll need to eliminate the boards. And those are the community players who come together and are working on juvenile justice. So without that buy-in to have those communities working and being accountable to DFS to address the problems appropriately, what kids need, then I think that will be lost. And if you've been around for a while, I've been here a lot of years talking about the need for us to really fix our juvenile justice system. There are so many issues in it. And this was one program that was passed that was really critical and a very critical step in that direction that I would just urge you to consider putting back in so we don't lose it.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Sheen, so my recollection is the funding has been cut. We eliminated that and eliminated the requirement of DFS to provide it moving forward. Did we not?
That's correct.
And one of the reasons they done that is for, because it appears that their opinion and your opinion may conflict, because for the very reasons you say it's so essential is the very reason they said it was one that they could probably live without. And so it wasn't being used statewide, and it was funded based on population. And if other counties wanted to come, it would certainly reduce even the larger counties' amount that they got, but they just had not had a lot of interest in that. We had quite a robust discussion on this last year when it was part of the step 1 and step 3. So I just want to make sure that my recollection, because I hear you say if it is eliminated, when I believe indeed, in fact, it has been eliminated. Am I saying that accurately?
Representative Larson, you are correct.
Okay.
And so it has been eliminated. Most of the programs are trying to make the decision now of whether they just need to shut down completely or whether there's a chance that they can be restored. We have worked with Department of Family Services, and I do think that in their vision, long-term of their new way of approaching these programs, that they intend to have something similar, a similar way to be able to fund programs like this that are effective. But I would say right now that infrastructure isn't in place. It's not as clear how communities can keep the programs they have alive. And so I think even in the short term, I think unfortunately we weren't aware at the time of what was happening to the funding until it was cut. So I apologize, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sheen, 2 questions. One is, youth from communities or counties that do not have these services, did they go to other counties to receive the services? And then a completely unrelated question to that one is how much are the counties contributing to these efforts in the counties where they're taking place?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, those are great questions. I would say not likely that counties were sharing programs, although that may well be. I don't know. I do think that, sorry, I forgot the other part of your question. Counties, it varied. I think in most cases, counties were funding at least a portion of them. I know in Albany County and Laramie County, both the county and the city try and contribute to the program, but the state funding were.
Was there a requirement of matching all?
Mr. Chairman, I don't recall anything in the statute that required any kind of matching.
Mr. Chairman. So this is both a question and also may answer the chairman's question. At least in Sweetwater County, how the money was actually used was to fund either a half-time or a full-time position for the person to administer the program. And in talking with the deputy county attorney, who's also on the juvenile services board there, he said that what he liked about it was that if he had a 16-year-old who, for example, had committed shoplifting or something, he had the choice with this program to divert them into something that's not jail. Whereas when the funding goes away, he doesn't have that choice anymore. Now he just has to prosecute them. So then the person gets sent off potentially to the boys' school, and it costs a lot more and is also not great for the individual necessarily. So he thought that the program was relatively good value for the taxpayer. Question is, to make that a question, is that how the money is spent in the other counties, that they're using it to fund a position or a half position?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiff, and to my knowledge, yes. In the beginning, they were using it for a lot of different things that were maybe of concern, including paying detention costs for kids. But I think over the years, those were the kinds of things that DFS was able to control. And now, to my knowledge, all of them are used for diversionary programs that keep kids out of court, which absolutely saves money overall.
There's an amendment.
Right. It's a question I have too. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
We do not.